Hey guys, do a few things, but I want to talk to you guys a little bit today about something I think is like a missing piece of the puzzle. Why are my connections weak in here? Oh, there we go. I noticed my connection's weak, so I had to turn on my Wi-Fi, which I didn't realize was off. But I like to carry my phone in my pocket. I always put on airplane mode to try to do several things to minimize. There we go. Connection's better. I try to do several things to minimize my exposure to any type of electromagnetic fields. So I carry my phone in airplane mode, and that's why connection was weak at first. So no, one of the things I want to talk to you guys about was something that I think is a huge missing piece to improving your health, and that's really dietary variation. And it's something that, you know, it's not really taught or emphasized that much. I think it's something that is becoming much better. It's being understood more and more. Let's see if I can put my password in correctly. Dietary variation is important because, well, for one thing, our bodies are not designed to have the same type of basic. Our bodies are designed to shift our metabolism, to shift from burning fat to burning sugars for energy, and that is how we're designed. That's our design. So varying your diet is something that's important. You know, if you look at going through at fasting, or if you look at consider this idea of feasting and having famine cycles, that's how our body's designed to work, guys. That's how it's designed to work. When you stay, like the standard American stays in a state of glycolysis, meaning they stay in a state of burning sugar for energy, you are going to create major problems. You're gonna see more problems with obesity and chronic disease processes like cancer, heart disease, brain degenerative conditions. You're going to see all that stuff if you keep your body burning sugar all the time. Because, guys, when you burn sugar, you spike insulin and you drive insulin higher, and that is inflammatory. There's all kinds of potential problems with that. But our bodies are designed to shift between states of fasting and fat burning and states of sugar burning. And when you keep your body burning sugar, you create, I think you create major problems. So one of the things that I really want to share with you guys is dietary variation is huge, and that's something that I'm really going to be focusing on moving forward with everyone that I work with, and in my approach to helping people get well. Because this the concept. Have you guys heard me talk about autophagy before? A few of you have. I'm gonna do like an in-depth well, it's gonna be more in-depth, like a whiteboard video on autophagy, and that's basically harnessing the body's ability to clear diseased cells. And that is huge, because when you go through these feast and famine cycles, you're harnessing, you do harness autophagy. And people, when a lot of people have problems, the reality is, how many of you have ever gone on a diet and you're like, I've done it and you do it for your entire lifetime? How many of you have known someone that's gone on a diet and stayed on it their entire lifetime? I don't know one person. I haven't, because, well, for one thing, that's not natural. That's not natural, guys. You wonder why we have struggles with obesity and all of these disease processes and everything, and everyone's got a magic bullet, right? I mean, even you guys start like my Hashimoto's transformation program, and one of the challenges for me is like, we take people through different diets and different types of programs that are designed to heal their body, but it's like the long term. What do? Do you stay on autoimmune paleo? I mean, what you do is you vary your diet, and there are much better ways to do that than just say, well, I'm just going to eat different foods. That's very arbitrary, and you can have more of a structure to it, to where you're varying your diet in very specific ways that can help you to harness the power of changing your body's metabolism and going burning fat for energy and going into glycolysis or sugar burning, which forces your body to adapt and helps you to break through plateaus where you're not losing weight or where you don't feel well, because going into fasted states and using fat for energy are fantastic for harnessing this power of autophagy, for improving hormone sensitivity, for improving cellular function. Listen, anyone that's studied in almost every major religion, they talk about feast and famine, and they talk about fasting, because they knew, the Greeks knew, that fasting was important. It's been for thousands of years we've known that this is an important thing. So, fasting, it's not just fasting. It's really, like I said, like dietary variation. So it's not quite that simple, but it's pretty close. I'm just checking. I'm looking up something here. I'll see it there. But anyway, I want to talk to you guys about dietary variation, because a lot of you have, we all know, like, if we've tried different diets, we all know that it's like, well, what is, just kind of instinctively, that diet by itself is not right. And that's why you've heard people say for years, you've got to make it a lifestyle. Well, typically that's some sort of very structured, regime of eating. And the fact is as a concept, it's a lot more simple, I think, as far as dietary variation. But eating the same thing, that's not how we were designed. If you think about our exposure to, I find myself saying this a lot lately, like, what would the true human experience be like before agriculturalism, before we farmed, and when we were more like hunters and gatherers. And I know you guys have heard about like paleo diets and stuff like that, but the paleo diets, they're more advocates of, primarily, meat and high, meat, fat, or proteins, fats, carbohydrates that are like leafy vegetables and root vegetables and stuff like that, which I think is an upgraded diet for sure. But there's not this dietary variation that's worked in with these feast and famine cycles. And especially, the idea of fasting. A lot of people think, well, if you fast, well, you're going to lose muscle mass and you're going to do all these other things. Quite contrary, the facts are just exactly opposite of that. Fasting, actually, you will burn through glycogen and sugar, and your body will switch to burning fat for energy. But you will absolutely spike your growth hormone levels, and you'll preserve muscle. It's unbelievably amazing what actually happens. So I want to talk to you guys about this, because this is one of the things that I'm really going to start weaving into what I do a lot more. Now, it's not that, and the thing is, that's not right for every single person, and you got to keep that in mind. Like, that's absolutely, just because I'm talking about this does not mean that is the right thing for every single person. That would be a huge mistake, because you've got to reach people where they are, and not where they're psychologically ready as much. A little bit of that too, but really where they're physically ready. Some people have such terrible blood sugar regulation that, yeah, you want to get them on a diet where they're eating steady, very frequent meals. And that's what I do primarily now, is I get people eating the right types of foods on very frequent meals, stabilize blood sugar, remove food sensitivities, remove the things that are kind of going to get in their way of their body just having normal function. But I think when we really get into this, we've got to start varying the diet. And one of the things that we have to start from the very beginning, actually, I've learned a tremendous amount recently. One of the things that we've got to start doing is we've got to start focusing on removing the environmental toxins from the body, at least at the same time that we're looking at food sensitivities and reactivity to pathogens, bacteria, viruses, fungal infections, parasites, and really testing environmental chemicals, an immune response to them. You can't, guys. Unfortunately, you cannot test toxins very efficiently. You can't, because some people have a very a poor or decreased ability to eliminate toxins, and other people have very efficient detoxification pathways. So if you're looking at the urine as a place of where toxins come out, what ends up happening is that if you cannot eliminate well, or you're not a good detoxifier, then you're not going to see it in your urine. So these tests that you think you're going to do that are going to be beneficial to show you toxins, you're going to get false information. You're going to get a false negative. You're gonna see that you're gonna look at your urine and be like, oh great, I don't have metals or whatever you're checking. But the fact is, you may just not be eliminating them well, and we know that these things embed in the tissues. So people say, well, why don't we just use DMSA or one of these chelators that are really powerful? Well, because you don't want to pull something out of the tissues and put it into circulation without a true binding, something to truly bind it and help carry it out, which chlorella is not a true binder. Cilantro is not a true binder. These things you need something to bind it to help carry it out. And then on top of that, when you start something like that and you pull something out of the tissues, you want a true binder, but you also that has to be done very, very consistently to keep pulling that stuff out so that it's not redepositing back into your tissues. Because these metals, all these mercury and mercury in particular, it deposits in neurological tissue. That's why one of the tests used to help evaluate whether or not you have you've been exposed to these different metals or biotoxins like mold toxins is a visual acuity test, because we can't test it in the tissues very well. We can't, like I said, we cannot measure it. We cannot measure these metals in the urine. We can't measure them in the hair if someone's a poor detoxifier. So it's not an effective way to measure it. An immune response is the best way to figure out if something's a problem. That's the best way, because we can see the immune system's response to it if it's reacting. That's one of the very best. But the visual acuity test is actually where you take a card that has different lines of different they're easier to see, some are easier to see, and it's a test. You literally hold it like 14 inches from your face, and you read through it, and depending on the different rows and areas that you are able to observe and see, it can give you a very good indication of whether or not you have exposure to metals or biotoxins. And I think it's like 92% accurate. I mean, there's reasons that people might not do well with that if they have cataracts or they've got some other issues with their eyes, but it's about 92% accurate. If you're near or farsighted, you have to be able to see close. So if you're farsighted, you can typically see near. If you're nearsighted, you can typically see far. And you have to have but you have to visual acuity. You can look at that and you can start determining, because why does that work? Because it's looking at the optic nerve, because these mercury and whatnot, they embed in the neurological tissues. So it affects the visual acuity. It's so one of the reasons we can test it that way. So anyway, really I want to share that with you guys. I've got to go. Just had to come up here for a few minutes. But I wanted to share that with you guys because it's super important. There's so many things that, constant evolution in learning about what's right, what's best for us, and how do we really get healthy. And I think the thing that's on the forefront right now is really a lot of these metals and toxins that are everywhere. And did you guys know this when I was learning this blew my mind, that so lead exposure, it can be passed down 4 generations. So 4 generations before me, if my my mother, my grandmother, my great grandmother, if they've been exposed to lead, they could have exposed that to me, because the lead is deposited in the bone. So when you carry your baby, that when you're carrying your baby in utero, women, they will release bone, and sometimes that's just a normal process where they're making calcium more available. When they release bone, they can liberate and free that lead into the bloodstream. That then gets deposited into the baby in utero and is passed down to the next generation. And that can happen over and over and over. 4 generations. So when you start looking at this, you're like, what is going on here? This is unbelievable. And I mean, how many of us, have been exposed before they even knew about lead, right? I mean, these generations before us, just bathing in these metals and things that we didn't really realize were it wasn't the magnitude. We didn't realize the magnitude of the problem at the time. Just a huge issue. Exactly, Sherry. 4 generations. When I said that, I was like flabbergasted. I was like, I know so much more about about toxins, and I knew about toxins before, and I knew it was a huge problem, but we're talking like 800,000 environmental chemicals and all these metals. I'm not talking, you know, the crazy thing is that we walk around, and I know there's a lot of controversy that surrounds it, but whatever. I mean, you just think about this. We walk around, and a lot of us have the amalgam fillings, right, the silver ones, and I had those, and I didn't have them removed by a biological dentist. They were removed like in 2000, and you know, when I think about this, it's like, this was before I had any autoimmune condition when I had these removed. And I didn't have them removed because I had amalgam fillings. I had them removed because I had cavities around them. And the dentist said, hey, we just need to go ahead and remove these fillings and put in the composites, which I have now. And I remember they used a dental dam and the plastic dam to catch the stuff as it was falling out. But listen, when you have mercury fillings removed, if you guys haven't seen it, you can look at like the smoking tooth video. It's been around for a while, but you can see that how mercury's vaporized. Look guys, they put mercury in these fillings, and I know that the Dental Association and everyone else, they disagree with this, but you just look at this. Why in the world would we ever put something in our mouth that before the dentist puts it into our mouth, it has a label that says skull and crossbones, toxic, it's a biohazard, like it has to be handled and like it's biotoxic, because it is. Then they mix it and they put it in your mouth in this filling, and then when they remove the fillings, the waste has to be treated like a biotoxin. But it's cool when it's in your mouth, right? No, that stuff is getting into our bodies, and that mercury, the place it deposits is the brain. And how do we check for it? Well, we can't, right? They're like, well, you can do a blood test. Well, when it embeds in the tissues, you're not going to see in the blood. We're going to do a urinary test or a hair test. Well, if you don't detoxify well, you're not going to see it there. So how do you check for it? Everybody's, you know, it's been ignored, quite frankly, because it's not able. I mean, what are you going to do, a biopsy of the neurological tissue of the brain? No one's going to do that. Of course not. So you do things like visual acuity. You just know that we're dealing with it. I mean, that's the fact. I mean, we just know we are being poisoned. We are being poisoned. Our children are being poisoned. Our communities are being poisoned. Our water's full of these chemicals that we don't even know the majority of them, what they do to us. We don't have a way to purify them. So we have to focus on trying to limit our exposure, and we have to focus on a consistent and constant process of detoxification that works intelligently to truly bind and carry these things out. I'll stop kind of lecturing you guys on that. I just get on this now. The more and more that I've learned about this, the more I realize that we are dealing with an epidemic of being poisoned. We are. We absolutely are. It's a terrible thing. Our kids are, and my concern is, you know what? My concern is more of our children and, you know, the future generations. Like, what are we actually leaving for them, and what are we doing? And it's not acceptable to me at all. So anyway, guys, I want to share that with you. I just came up here for a few minutes. I want to make sure I don't get too distracted and forget everything that I came up here to get. Let's see. Okay. So what else was I going to tell you guys? It seems like there was something else I was going to mention to you. I don't know. I think that might be everything. It's hard for me to do two things at once. Yeah, this is hugely ignored, Jessica. Like unbelievably ignored. And you know what? Quite frankly, hopefully my alarm doesn't go off on me. Quite frankly, I didn't ignore it, but you know, I like testing so much I like testing to help us quantify like what we're dealing with, what we're looking at, so that I can give you guys guidance. Like, I really like numbers if I can get them, because we can measure. I like things we can measure a lot, but you can't measure everything the way that you think you should. You just can't. You can't measure everything. And that's just the fact of it. So just knowing what that we're dealing with being poisoned, basically, and that's the fact, I think is really important. And identifying some of the sources of these metals and chemicals and everything that we're seeing is huge. So that's one of the things that I'm really focusing on. And really what I try to do is always harness the body's natural healing abilities to help us as much as possible. So that's why I talked about dietary variation first, because that is, it's so important to understand that when you vary your diet, your body, and you force this metabolic pressure on the body, it will adapt, and it will help to clear diseased cells from the body. It's called autophagy. You can look it up. It's a real thing. It's used very routinely with brain injuries, concussions. It's a critical piece of the puzzle to clearing diseased cells, decreasing inflammation, improving hormone sensitivity, improving cellular sensitivity. So many of us have neurologically based poisoning with mercury and these other chemicals and metals that we have got to clear them, or we are going to have persistent problems with all of these issues that we look at. You know, people say, well, diabetes is at an all-time high. It is. And it is a problem with diet for sure. But what if your cells are so, the cell itself is so insensitive to insulin, and you develop insulin resistance due to these chemicals and a lot of these things that are inflammatory in our environment? What if the cell can't function properly? And you're only looking at one piece of it, thinking it's the diet, because there's a lot of people that try to eat and do everything right and exercise, and they still can't, their diabetes is still, they can't get it to budge, or they can't lose weight, or they have hormonal problems. Well, all of your hormones, the way they work is they impact the cell, every cell of your body, the trillions of cells in your body. And the way they do that is they communicate with the cell, with the receptor, the outside, the cell wall. The hormones touch it and activate it. So if you're having a problem and all these chemicals and everything else are affecting the cellular function and physiology, it's a big problem. And it's not just diet or exercise or the supplement you're going to take. You have toxins in your body that have to be eliminated if you want to improve the function of the cell. It's, conceptually, that's as simple, There are lots of things, guys. We have to take as comprehensive of an approach as possible. So that's I've been talking about this a lot lately because that's what I think we really need. It's the missing piece for a lot of the people that I've worked with. I think that they need is to take this on. And the thing is, it's different for everyone. So some people that have toxicities like this, and they have these mercury, for example, locked into these neurological tissues. They have to go through phases of detoxification, pulsing it on and off, using, I'm telling you, the way to do it is using feast and famine cycles and using varied diets where they force their body into ketosis, and then they use glycolysis, or burning sugar for energy, and they vary this process where they eat some carbs and they go into ketosis, and then they might fast a day, and then they keep doing the dietary variation. That, in combination with some things I'm talking about, is the way to eliminate these things, and I think to improve the immune system too. Now, some people are going to need they're going to need more than that too. They're going to need advanced testing beyond that, but using this dietary approach and the true binders and things to eliminate these toxins and chemicals, I think is going to be huge for us, guys. Huge. I'm super excited about it because I think it's the absolute, it's the way to, it's the best way that it makes the most sense to me. It's the best way to approach this with, the current knowledge that I think we have, and in functional medicine, nutritional healthcare is, I think it's the future of it. So, hey Cindy, have two Cindys. Hey Barbie, hope you're doing well. Jessica, what about joint replacements? Cindy, I'm not real sure about what your question is exactly about joint replacements. It depends on what in context of, is it due to a particular problem? Are you talking about osteoarthritis? Are you talking about rheumatoid arthritis or something like that? But I don't know if you, Cindy, if you get a chance and if you can elaborate on your question about joint replacements, I'll try to answer it. But right now I have to get off here because I'm getting ready to get on the road. But I've got to, I'll look at it and I'll try to answer you guys soon. But guys, if you want to learn more about this detoxification and everything that I'm talking about, make sure you join me on the webinar, which is going to be soon. It's not going to be too much longer. It's hashimotosdoctor.com/TCD. Okay. Hey guys, Dr. Shook, thank you for viewing our videos. I hope they help you out. If you want to, just subscribe to our channel somewhere here. You can watch a video that YouTube's actually selected for you, so hopefully it'll help you out. If you need any other information or resources, just look in the description. We've got links to our website, to our 9 lab test guidebook, and everything else that we do. I really appreciate you, and I hope you guys have a great